achieving things. So achieving things is possible. Things get easier with age to an extent, but you have less time. That's what I find. So you have to kind of navigate, schedule things, and like organize a lot better. And you can't just get lazy. A lot of people they get home and they just want to drink and they just want to like lay down and die. Watch television and just drink alcohol and just not really do anything. And I get it. There's times for rest, sure, but you're not really going to achieve anything if all you're doing is excessively resting. And what I find is that heal yourself to a point that is healthy. It's like eat to a point that is healthy, and you will realize your body will tell you when you are overeating. Your body will tell you when you are over resting. And sometimes you want to overeat and overrest because you've got a lot going on next week or whatever, and you need that kind of energy. But otherwise, it's once you feel that point, it's time to go to work. It's time to work on whatever side projects, hobbies, side businesses, and such. Because consistency and the more work you put in is going to get you more results. It's like the idea of if you are unsatisfied by the amount you have harvested or received, what you've gained from doing, then you are, number one, not doing enough, and number two, not putting enough energy, focus, mental resources in, and number three, you have not done it for a long enough time period. That pretty much is the three secrets, I guess, to achieving things. And I'm not going to say I'm the person who's achieved a bunch of things. In some regards, I'm behind. In some regards, I'm ahead. So, that's life, I guess. But at the end of the day, I am very much a self-made person and a self-directed person, right? So I've learned what it takes to get something, right? And again, you have to ask yourself, do you want to succeed at something? Do you want to gain something? Do you want to get something, right? If it's yes, well, are you willing to put in that time and to take away time from maybe spending time with family or friends or resting or, whatever like addictive habits you have? Are you willing to take time and energy and money and such away from that and then put it into spending half an hour learning a language every couple of days, right? Because if not, well, you're probably not going to get much, right? So, and then it's a matter of just because you spend half an hour a day, a couple of days a week doing something doesn't mean you're going to achieve something this year or next year or the year after it, right? It could take you 10, 15, 20 years to achieve the thing you want. So you have to ask yourself, are you okay with that? And of course, if you want it quicker, you're going to have to do more. Double that time up and maybe you'll get it in 7 or 5, right? It's not exactly a nice thing to think about. And of course, you'll eventually get to a point where you think, well, maybe I'm in over my head. Maybe this is a little too much work for me. But I don't know. I've got that drive in me. I have that fire which will burn me if I don't do something. I guess it's just like I'm the kind of person who I look at people out and about and think you are wasting your time. Like work is there to make money. Going outside is there to buy groceries and stuff from the hardware store and like whatever, right? It's like otherwise I'm grinding, I'm working at home. Like that's, to me, that's having a life. Like not having a life is being out, trying to eat somewhere or like just going out shopping because you have a shopping addiction or something. It's like, what are you doing? What are all these people doing on the road? Why is it so busy? Why are the shops so busy? Why are there so many people here? Does no one have a life? Couldn't you get your groceries some other time, right? That's kind of what I'm thinking. Maybe that's just me. So it's like, no matter what, I'm just going to do my thing. I'm just going to like work towards something because that's the kind of person I am. I'm alive when I'm doing thing usually at home. That's just who I am, right? I find that fun. Maybe it's partially it's being a man. It's just you have that drive, that fire in you to do things, right? I'm sure women have an internal drive to do things in their own way, but I don't really know. Success or achieving things is really just, again, putting in time over time, day by day, and then just putting in lots of effort. Just time and effort, pretty much. That's really all it is. And then it's just, you will figure the rest out. There's a lot, you have to be very flexible. There's a lot you'll have to deal with. And yeah, you'll figure it out, I guess. So there's a term that's been created. I think the term is crashing out. It's a pretty good term, I got to say, but it's actually a horrible thing. If you've ever, quote unquote, crashed out, which pretty much means it's like when you get so stressed and that you can't handle it, so you start. It's almost like self-destructive behavior, right? So someone will become hyper fixated. Just say you say something and it calls them out, and they don't want to be called out on something, something bad they're doing or whatever. Then they'll double down on it, and then eventually it'll become a crash out, right? And this is it's an extreme form of self-destructive behavior and all that kind of stuff, right? And of course, I remember being young and not fully being in control of my emotions and all this kind of stuff, and having that happen to me, it's a horrible thing, right? Especially if you're if you've ever been a drug addict or been lower class, bad neighborhoods, all that kind of stuff. This happens a lot to those kinds of people. But, you see it a lot on the internet. It happens all the time. And really, I think we all kind of need to be careful ourselves to not let it happen, to not let any kind of self-destructive behavior happen. I feel so far removed from it because the last, I would say, 10 years, it's I've had to work really hard to survive is the best way to put it. So there's no option or no room for any kind of self-destruction. So I almost feel when I watch it, I'm geez, what are people doing? But actually what happens a lot of the time is someone who's maybe middle upper class or upper class, and if they're young, you see people who, their father bought them a car or bought them a holiday or whatever, and they just ruin the time or ruin, the vehicle, or they get given a job, a good high level job, and they just destroy that and purposefully, but I think it's imagine having a well-paying job, that's that'd pretty much make your life set. But some of these people who are too young and too emotionally mature, and I don't want to drag the young down or anything. This isn't some people, they think because someone's young, they're just they're always going to be naive and stupid. It's no, it's not always. But it does, of course, when you are younger, if you have that kind of opportunity and you don't capitalize on it, you don't realize how important it is. Self-destructive behavior can come out and destroy your life pretty much. And usually what happens to these people, they will hit a state of rock bottom enough times that eventually enough pain, enough fear is kind of inflicted on them that they start to wisen up and become less naive. And really what happens is that the older you get, it's almost the less opportunity you get, right? When you're young and a kid, you get tons of opportunity because everyone's interested in who you're going to become, and you get a lot of gifts, and depending on the era, of course. Admittedly, my era was kind of one where there wasn't much opportunity work-wise, but things will turn around, right? And there will again become a lot more opportunity. But if you don't capitalize on that, it's kind of it's not good, right? So I think it really comes down to emotional control and emotional regulation. And I think meditation and also what you call trauma or shadow work really helped me to develop emotional maturity. Now, usually men will have, at least outwardly, men will have issues with emotional maturity. It's a bit like if you're on the road, you're driving, and people are speeding and cutting you off and being really annoyed and tailgating you and all this stuff. This is like an issue of emotional immaturity, right? Because you're on the road, it's dangerous. You want to be, I try to, the way I see it, it's like it's only the road. You don't want to get too annoyed. It's like if you're late, you should have gone a bit earlier, right? You always got to prepare for bad weather and bad traffic, no matter where you go. So usually men will have issues more externally with emotional maturity. Women complaining about them in relationships and all this kind of stuff, and whatever. Now, women actually, at least in my country, seem to have an issue as well with emotional maturity. I would assume they have less of an issue because they're more in their emotions, but if a woman hasn't transmuted the darkness of her soul, same way if a man hasn't done this, then they will have ill emotions, mean emotions. They will be psychically dangerous to people, which really just means thinking bad thoughts and feeling bad feelings towards other people unneedingly, right? Instead of having that layer of compassion. Because what I find is you should always have a layer of compassion. Now, of course, a layer of compassion is not an infinite amount. It's not like a giant toilet paper roll you can just keep pulling off from, right? You get one or two pieces, and that's it. Then after that, if someone's trying to screw with you, then you can harden, or you can get your sword and shield up, so to speak, emotionally, right? If you have that little bit of relaxation, that little bit of peace, it'll stop you from getting too lost in tension, lost in... This even works if you, just say you step on something sharp or you touch something sharp and you have a little bit of relaxation. It actually protects you. I think it's like related to, they call it the chi shield, in like Chinese, like Taoist kind of stuff, I guess you would say, the chi barrier or whatever. And it just seems to be, because the healthier you are, you've got more of that little barrier. But it's just like being a bit more relaxed. It almost lets you be like a fish, and you can just like navigate yourself and just like flow through the river of complexity and chaos, which is unfortunately more so modern Western society, at least as far as I know. I don't know about other countries, right? Make sure you don't become self-destructive. If you do find yourself in a state where you are, quote unquote, crashing out, take a step back, maybe take a day off, and just get something nice to eat and take a bath if you can. Just relax, try to solve your issues. A lot of the times, just say if two people are in some kind of relationship, friendship, whatever, and it's not really working, and they don't want to try for the next cycle. Some people have some rough gears that kind of grind, and then once they're through those, it's like then things are okay, things are a bit smooth again. But if something is really like a toxic relationship, right? Some people who can't just say, hey, this isn't working, I'm going to go. Because sometimes when you do that, people go nuts, or they start to fight you, or physically, verbally, or they stalk you and all kinds of, let's just say, some people are a little bit, they can't take that. So I do understand why people ghost and all that stuff, even though it's, you don't want to ghost if you can avoid it. But if people can't do that, they can't disconnect, then sometimes they will become very toxic to kind of force a disconnection. It happens at work. Sometimes people, they want to get out of their job, so they just be terrible, and it just makes them, the whole group, not function very well, and it's just not very good, right? So I guess the thing is, like, you can question what is the toxic behavior what is the root cause of the toxic behavior and the self-destructive behavior. And also one other thing is that I almost think like there's so many undisciplined children in adults' bodies. There's so many children in adults, or people who are emotionally children in adults' bodies. you can really start to understand people. You know, if someone comes up to you and they're trying to start shit with you, could be at work, could be just as, you know, out and about, could be, you know, or even on the internet. That's not really normal. It's fine to have disagreement and, like, you know, to call things out and such. But if someone just is antagonizing and they're trying to fight, you got to think this person is probably emotionally a child, right? Even though they're in the body of a 30, 40, could be 60, 70-year-old person, right? They are still emotionally, internally, they are in a self-destructive shadow state, you know, a traumatized, childlike state. And you have to realize that and deal with them accordingly, and not allow yourself to, you know, get into a bad state as well, because of course people are going to try to bring that out in you, and try to resonate that out in you, so to speak. So, you know, you have to figure out a way to properly deal with it. Unfortunately, I know in my country it almost seems like everyone's emotionally a child, unfortunately, but that is just kind of how, I guess, like a southern hemisphere country is. I don't know. Anyway, right. So tension and relaxation is essentially like the yin yang of the body, and it's like how you can control the energy, right? So relaxation is, you know, yin or negative or passive. What happens is that blood and energy and whatever else falls down. But it's kind of interesting because it's like everything falls down, and like long term, because, like, I guess blood vessels open up and circulation opens, you start to become warmer, right? And the opposite is tension, which is, you know, the positive, constricting, like electrostatic force, as opposed to the magnetic, which is the feminine, you know, the expansive field-like force, right? If you tense, it's like initially you'll get hot and then you'll get cold. You'll kind of chill out because your circulation's, like, you know, not, it's like restricted, right? So it's like they work in opposites. But anyway, so in yoga and other spiritual traditions, there's these things like locks and bandhas and all kinds of different weird positions. The Padmasana position, which is where you sit in, you know, full lotus. So you sit down and you kind of twist your legs into this weird position that essentially cuts off the circulation and, like, nervous system circulation as such. So your energy and your blood does not flow through your legs. And what happens is that it also does not flow down to the root. You can think like the root chakra, you know, the gonads, the bowels, etc., the root of the body, which is not good long term. Now, this position is used because the meditator, you know, wants to enter higher states of consciousness. So usually in any, like, proper, ordered, structured spiritual tradition, the first step is working on and strengthening your foundation. Now, you can, of course, do these locks or raises once your foundation is higher, if you really just want to, you know, boost up, you know, your energy and go to, like, a higher state of something. Sure, but long term, it is essentially, it's like taking a stimulant, like drinking caffeine or smoking cigarettes. It does the same thing. It's a bit like, I always think, all right, so I'll explain this. So there are locks in the body, these things called the bandhas, right? And these locks are, for example, the first one is your anus. And if you tighten this and you tense it, what happens is that the energy does not flow down to the root, and then it goes to the next level, and then it is the like the perineal genital level, right? And if this is tensed and tightened, the energy then flows up again to usually around, like, the bladder region. Again, that will get tightened and tensed. That's another bandha or lock. And then to the digestive system, or the stomach, the belly, you know, that will be tensed and pulled in, like they do the vacuum. And then the chest region, and then the throat region, and the head, and eventually the energy will be forced up to the the top of the brain and such. For example, in the mouth, there's the closing of the jaw, which relates specifically to the root, and then there is the rising of the tongue up to the palate, the roof of the mouth, which is related to the water, or the bladder region, right? It draws the water and sexual energy, reproductive energy up higher. So what happens if you close your jaw and you put your tongue up, so you seal it kind of up? There's a certain way to do it. Then your energy in your blood and such, and your focus and that will go to the top of the body, so the brain and also the lungs and the heart, the chest, right? It'll go from the lower area to the upper area. Now, again, long term, this is not good for your physical health and structure and wealth and all that stuff. Wealth, usually, unless it's like volatile and quick, it relates to the lower areas, right? Now, this is, of course, it will overcharge your intelligence and your creativity and such. So there are interesting effects, and of course, the reason why, like, the meditators will do this is to unlock and develop the higher levels, right? So, because they're working, depending where. The Taoists usually they'll be working with the internal organs, and then the yoga people will be working more into the brain eventually once they get to higher levels, right? So the more tension, essentially, the more of these locks, it's like I think of it like a toothpaste tube. You're squeezing the toothpaste tube, and then the toothpaste is like rising and rising and rising. You're not really getting more toothpaste, which is a problem, right? Instead, the opposite is relaxation. Relaxation, you imagine you relax the head, relax the jaw, the tongue, relax the throat, relax the chest, the belly, the bladder and genital region, and the anus, and like your butt and perineal region, right? Relax these things. What happens is that the energy goes down to the lowest point, which is your legs. If you don't have, especially if you're standing, if you're sitting, it'll be more to the lower area of the body, the butt and such. But if you're standing, it's more to the legs. So if you're not doing any kind of like full lotus leg locks or anything, then it'll go down to the legs and it'll build up your foundation. Now, what will happen if you do, see, this is more like the yin path or soft path, or you could say it's a water path, or water path would more be working with the bladder and the water organs and such. So it's debatable, because then you could break it down to earth path and water path and all these different things, right? But so this sends the energy down, and what it does is that it regenerates your stamina and fertility and physical health and structure and kind of long-term ability and long-term wealth, right? And your ability to like impose your will upon reality, because it's like hard, like the ability to work hard and be dedicated and just like physically do things, right? Which is very important. You kind of have to choose, do you want to do the yin or the soft or the lower path, where you let the water fall and then it'll slowly rise up? Because if you just you allow your body to just gather and gather and gather and gather, it'll build up pressure and it'll raise the water level. It's like turning on a tap and having a glass of water or something, right? Or do you want to do the opposite, which is steaming, or like imagine you turn a flame on a hot plate on, right, and you're burning or steaming or cooking this water, and it's rising up, it's electricity going up, right? That's what they say, like steaming of the essences, essentially. And that's what Kundalini, you can kind of think, is this raising of the lower fertility essence and other essences and such. They're usually through tension. Sometimes it can just happen actually when you build up enough in the lower areas. It can just kind of rise, and usually it'll get stuck at different parts of the nervous system and such. Feels like it's like electricity going up your spine. It's very uncomfortable, but and then it destroys your life, and you have to tape it back together and staple it back together and remake it. Essentially, it's a very uncomfortable process. But if you have to go through it, if you've got a lot of like trauma in the body or weakness of health, or you have like a lot of bad things in your life, that need to get out. It's kind of one of those things that just happens, right? Now, you won't always have to do one thing or the other, as in eventually, if you stay down enough, it's a bit like the bamboo plant. The bamboo, it draws into its roots until it's ready to go up. There's that saying of stay down until you're ready to come up. It's a good one. Essentially, it means feed the legs and the root until you have developed them, and then once you have developed them properly, then you can come up, which is come up to the higher levels, the belly, the chest, the arms, the head, the throat. This will, of course, also relate to your life. People who are in this tension state, they're always moving, right? Their bodies are lighter, like a bird or something, hollower, less dense, right? And these people, they get more opportunities maybe, but they don't have stability. Well, people who are opposite have a lot of stability, who are more yin, down, more relaxed, more stability, more, but they're stuck to a certain place, and they're stuck having possessions. Like they don't really rent things. It's not what they do, right? Depending, like if you are tense, life will eventually say, hey, nope, time to do the opposite, and then it'll swing the pendulum. It's like when someone's really thin and then they get really fat, when they're really fat and then they get really thin. It's this duality. And of course, relaxing will fatten the body. Women are, by their hormones, it's meant to cause like a sensation of relaxation. Now, of course, because relaxation, it makes you, it's like allowing you to psychically pick up on things, and because society's in a tense state and everything's crazy, and it's kind of funny actually. It's like people are on like medication to make themselves like be okay with how insane reality is because of how tense everything is. So while women are meant to be more relaxed, they're probably picking up on the tension of society through their psychic nature, so which is not good. And then like being in the middle, I always thought was like the idea of tense relaxed. It's like half and half. Oh yeah, body types, right? And then tensing will make you leaner and thinner, right? Kind of quicker, and like we all know like that athletic, fiery body type, right? As opposed to like an earth or a water. And then an air is kind of like long, alien ass looking limbs, not a lot of muscle, pretty smart, usually good at talking. They're not always super long, but they are usually very thin, pale looking, kind of smart people, right? So it's kind of like, I always think, those cymatic patterns, water or sand, it vibrates to a certain pattern based on the frequency or the sound that it is fed, and the sound or frequency is tension and relaxation and whatever like in between, or whatever like way of this pick your own adventure book you want to go. Like you get to pick, and it's, of course, you get to pick over a long period of time. It's not going to change you overnight. As an example, when I was younger, And of course, when we're younger, we're more tense, we're more yang, positive, fiery, especially men. Men are more inherently like that. When I was young, and I would just train all the time, basically myself adrenal fatigue. I'd smoke cigarettes and drink coffee and eat simple carbohydrates and protein and all that. And I just train all the time, and I'd be constantly like making art and just scrambling to survive somehow. And I'd have to ride a bicycle or walk everywhere. I was pretty thin. That was when I was the most thin of my life, because people were jealous of me because like they wanted that. But the truth is that body type came from a very unhealthy life. It was a very unstable, very chaotic life. And now I live a lot more stable life. It's still fairly unpleasant, but it's getting better. My body type is, I'm a lot more thick, put on a lot more muscle. I'm a lot more, stable, I guess. I don't smoke cigarettes or drink coffee anymore. I don't really ride a bicycle. I don't train all the time. Unfortunately, I don't have much time to do it. I pretty much work too much. Working will make you more stable and kind of fatten you up, assuming you have a real job, not like a fake job, right? So there you go. That's like the change that's happened. Of course, I got older. That was like, geez, was that like 6, 8, 9, whatever years ago, right? That it would have been like that. So and then what does the future have in store? Who knows, right? I guess it's like I get to choose. And of course, it depends on what my life has to be. Because here's the thing: you will be shaped by your country, your family, your areas, all these things. If you can't shape them, so I'll leave it with that. One thing that I'm finding, which is really important to like the middle level or the middle class, is clothing. Clothing's kind of weird because when you wear, just say you dress up, you start to notice all the people who aren't dressed up. And I don't judge people who don't dress up. As long as your clothing is clean and it doesn't have gaping holes everywhere. A sewing kit's not that expensive, and it is actually good from a practical reason to repair your clothing, because you don't want like it getting caught in anything, right? I think that's fine. But it is definitely a way to almost present or show status in a strange way. And I guess in like the world of work and business, certain types of clothing is expected. And of course, this kind of information was difficult for me to understand. As I get older, I'm finding out that to an extent you do want to follow the rules enough. Of course, the higher your status is, the more kind of powerful you are, the less you have to follow these social norms and rules and such. I think almost like what we have to do is we have to game the system the same way. See, Indians are really good at gaming systems, is what I find. They get to like high positions, and they get they get jobs and all this kind of stuff just because they're so good at gaming everything. Any kind of qualification or thing that's needed for a job, or like dress code, or like whatever, mostly they seem to just figure this stuff out and like go for that. Even if they're lacking in like actual practical fundamental skills, they seem to know how to game it. And if you're a person who is kind of maybe a bit out there, like myself, who has never cared for these things, you have to learn to game the system. I have never bothered to that with that, because I've always stubbornly thought, I will do everything my own way. And unfortunately, it could just be, I think people in America have a bit better of a chance doing that kind of stuff, just because of the way American society is set up. It is, it's I guess fairly entrepreneurial. But if you're in another country, you just fundamentally aren't good enough, let's be honest, to get what you want and do what you want, which the truth is I wasn't. I did struggle. You have to, number one, you have to learn to figure out these kind of norms and also game the norms, right? In of course, ethical, proper way. I'm not talking about like cheating or lying or stealing your way up to the top, but just seeing it as, again, if you have that kind of mind, you'll be able to systematize everything and structure everything, and see it as like, if you do this, then that will happen. It's like computer programming, right? Again, I think like an old imperative programming language, right? So anyway, now if you go into a store, like a general store that has men's and women's clothing, one thing is very interesting is that the men's clothing, there's a lot less men's clothes and there's a lot more women's clothes, right? I'm actually kind of jealous of just how much variety there is, and they make clothes for people with thicker legs. Let's just say that. So it's envious. If anyone's done a lot of like bike riding or a lot of like leg training, you know the struggles of trying to fit into pants after that. But going on, at least for the men's clothes, I think for the women's as well, they've got it in different categories, which are kind of unsaid categories. Now, of course, socially and in this middle level, everything becomes unsaid. It's kind of expected that you know everything and have done everything. That's like how the world has been set up. And I think that's kind of crumbling and it's not really working anymore. So now things that probably need to be clearly explained. But going on, these categories are, for work categories, you've got the two different kinds, which is number one is that you have white collar business office work people stuff. So it's like semi-suit, like formal clothing, like sharp kind of tighter shoes and like darker colors. And then you have the like the trades worker, labor worker, other like blue collar side, which is more rugged fabrics, more maybe visible, stronger, heavier, more protective boots like steel caps and such. So these are the two major categories of like work clothing. Now, of course, when I say something like gaming the system or trying to, follow the natural order of things, you would of course pick the clothing for your job. And it sounds simple, but this is one of those things, again, not really being like middle class or like growing up as I never really, this didn't really pass my mind or cross my mind at all. So I always struggled for this, hence why I'm making a video to explain my thoughts on all this kind of stuff. And then of course you have clothing in the non-work categories, which is you've got three main categories of clothing, I would say. In general, the first one is like lower class, is more related to the lower class, right? Which is comfortable clothing. It's soft fabrics. It's sometimes even heavier, but mostly like natural, soft, round, casual clothing, which is unrestricted and breathable and all that kind of stuff, right? Admittedly, actually, you could split that into like sports stuff and then casual stuff. I guess there is also like 4 categories in that, or even 5, you could say, if you added work. Whatever, we'll just say, okay, we'll say 5. First category is casual clothing. Second is sports clothing. Third is kind of like out and about daily life, like social life, kind of, something that's a little more restrictive, right? Like semi-tailored pants, cargo pants, like tougher fabric, harder fabric pants and all that kind of jeans, tailored shirts that aren't super formal, right? So something that you could maybe wear in a business casual, that you'd kind of mix formal with informal for like a business casual, right? Then third category is business clothing, which is again tailored shirts, a lot of synthetics, a lot of harder or not harder, but like not soft fabric. It's more stuff that you would iron, right? But the pants, business pants, are very like, man, those things are like tissue paper. It's so thin, so like not good fabric, right? And then I would say the fifth is formal, and of course formal and business is similar, but formal is more like suits, right? Suits and maybe some certain coats. Of course, business can be coats, and even like social clothing can be coats and all that stuff. And then of course you can mix and match vaguely in any category, but of course, wearing like sports clothes with formal clothes is not going to work, right? I mean, some people try to wear, runners or joggers or sneakers, whatever you call them in your country, running shoes, right? With suits, and it doesn't really work. You could maybe get away with the like a casual like canvas shoes or like something, like fabric shoes, something kind of casually with a suit. If it was like black or brown or good enough shape and colored, but it may not properly work. So anyway, colors are an interesting thing. If you understand color theory, and I'm an artist by past, because I used to be more of an artist, and I'll get there eventually again, I guess. Colors, if you want to look into color theory, shades, clashing and contrasting colors, and then you'll understand how to put colors together. More or less, don't put two contrasting colors that are very bright, very strong. Of course, that you can break the rules if you want. If you put colors that work, that are like similar, like blues and purples and maybe greens, they're all fine. Or you put like browns and like reds and yellows, and it's all similar colors, right? White and black is a strong contrast. It does work. You can do something like a low contrast or like a weak red and a strong blue or something, or a strong red and a weak blue. If it's very like a gray blue. Basically, if you want to mix opposing colors, you have to kind of get like a lighter or a grayer version of the semi color or the weaker color. You just put colors together and you'll kind of figure it out, right? You'll have your own style, and then of course, if you understand like colors relate to elements or organs, right? So white is raises, it's higher, so it gives you that like aura, that like shining, like white and gold kind of give you that, right? And reds, and then blues and blacks are like a down color, like a heavy color, right? And browns and all that. Yeah, I don't know. I guess like the moral of the video is that it's like looks maxing is like middle class maxing, right? So when guys get really into looks maxing, which usually if you're like a young 20s guy, maybe late teens in this era, and you've suffered with like jobs, women, just like society in general, which is honestly, I would say 60, 70, 80% of men, let's be real, young men, excuse me, you're going to probably look into that stuff. Of course, that was a little bit after my era, but I still caught a little bit of it and I saw a little bit of it. And really what these guys are doing is that they are like trying to appear not as lower class, maybe they're trying to appear more middle or even middle upper, because upper almost is like when you start breaking the norms. It's like if you have a wardrobe and it's good and it fits and it's nice, it's like middle class. If you don't really have much of a wardrobe, or you just have like work and casual clothing, that's like lower class, right? Then upper class is more when you start to like accessorize and like style it and like just look a little bit extra, right? You don't just have the generic white shirt, black pants at work. You've got something a little bit more. I know you got a nice coat, or you got like a vest or something. Just a little extra. That really nice pair of shoes, like a watch. This is why people buy watches. It's why people buy expensive shoes, necklaces, all this stuff, which is like, in my eyes, it's so useless. It's so useless, right? Like, who gives a shit about a watch? If you like watches, whatever, I don't care a fucking bit about watches at all. I would rather, like, I don't know, if you're gonna wear some accessory, I don't even know, make something cool, make some cool piece of technology and wear it. Like, but again, it signals status. That's why why men do it. Usually, and women, women have their own way of doing this, but women, it's different because women kind of exist within the middle class, and signaling status is actually not really a good thing for. It's not like it has diminishing returns beyond a point for women. So, yeah, but also, I don't really think you should be like overdoing it and pretending you're upper class, right? Or pretending you're more than what you are. I think you should more just be at the level you are, and accept that, even if you have to like struggle for a couple of years or whatever, and suffer in that. It's just kind of like let yourself be where the water falls, wherever the water line is, wherever the water sinks to, just let yourself be at that level, because you won't create unnecessary stresses. Okay, so yeah, and then as I said, like the summarizing point is, in society, figure out the game and game the game, or play the game, break the game. I don't know. Learn the rules before you break the rules, of course. But what I mean is, like, figure out what you need to do to get what you want and be realistic about it instead of idealistic. And of course, if you genuinely can go outside the game and make your own game and, do things and, basically make money outside of the system or whatever, then do that. Or get the things you want outside the system or outside of the generic ways, then do that. And of course, I'm not telling you to become some generic, boring ass normal person. There's nothing more tragic than when you see like a woman that like looked beautiful and then they become generic to try to be more like popular and like fit in to the mainstream, and now they're just uninteresting completely. Like there's nothing more boring than that. Like as a man, I think having some of these other things that like I don't like cut my hair down to a nothing, right? Like most guys, it's pretty much, if you're a worker, you shave your hair down quite a lot. If you're a blue collar, you shave it down quite a lot. Or if you are white collar, you can have a little more. It's like, I mean, it's boring, let's be ourselves a little more. Let's make things a bit more fun, right? So I think trying to become I'm not telling you to become something mainstream or whatever, but just to it's like Saul Goodman did it well, where he still wore the suit because he's in law, but he wears crazy colors because that's his personality, that's him, that's his soul coming out, right? So it's like you have to play the game until you've like won the game, or you're so powerful that you don't have to play the game. If you still have to play the game, and you've got to play the game, but play it in your way, play it in a way that's cool. And usually what happens is that when you get big enough and powerful enough and whatever, whatever your style is becomes the popular new cool style, and other people start copying you and then saying you copied them. And so begins the war of artists and such. That's how that stuff works, right? So anyway, I don't know. You can buy an entire wardrobe for like $300-$500. If you do it cheap, just from a budget store. You could buy a bunch of shirts, a bunch of casual, a bunch of regular, some work shirts. You could buy some casual regular work pants. You could buy a pair of shoes, a couple of pair of shoes or two. $300-$500, of course, depending on how much stuff you need. If you gotta buy a lot more, then a little more. But level up your wardrobe, level up your presentation in society. And or even if you don't have the money, as I said, if you have patches and shit, if you've got holes, you patch them up. If your clothing needs a bit heavier washing to get rid of some stains or something, like just level it up, or maybe buy a few extra things to work with what you got. You will probably get a better reaction from society and be able to do more. If you wear it, there's a joke of like, if you wear high vis, you can get into anywhere. If you wear a suit, you can get into anywhere as well. So it's a bit like that anyway. Goodbye.